Why are people so much against the caste census? Like, what don't they like about it?
Close to 4 lakh cases of discrimination are registered by the league, which comes to on an average about 14,000 cases per year.
The history of the Dalits, the OBC, tribals, has just been eliminated.
Part of the portion of the Manusmriti was burned. So that's the beginning of the civil rights movement.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to have an interaction.
No, I wanted to talk to you about, particularly the caste census, how it's going, what your thoughts are, and also some of your ideas on education. Yeah. We agree on discrimination and the levels of discrimination in India. So I wanted to get a sense of what you're thinking.
No, I also wanted to know the insight that you have got through your long march and new knowledge. Yeah.
Like, I've had discussions with people about the caste census, where I'm saying, look, all we're doing is exposing the truth.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
And they will say to me directly that no, one must not expose this truth.
Yeah.
Oh, why not? Right? That unfairness is taking place in front of your face. You've got the constitution that says all Indians are equal. It is absolutely crystal clear what is going on, and you just don't want to accept it.
The social situation of the scheduled caste or Dalit, I think it's a very auspicious occasion because the 20th March he started the Mahad agitation satyagraha to have an entry to the water, to the tank, and it resulted into violence. Yeah. As you rightly said, the Brahmin priest in the city of Mahad purified the water by putting the urine of cow and milk, and they purified the water because it was polluted because of the touch by Dr. Ambedkar and others. And then of course Dr. Ambedkar got very agitated about this and a lot of pain, anguish. Then they organized the second conference in March, where the part of the portion of the Manusmriti was burned by a Dalit saint and the Brahmin gentleman called Mahar. So that's the beginning of the civil rights movement and denial of civil and political and economic right to the untouchables. That because of his effort, then the constitution had a provision for equal right, equal opportunity, non-discrimination. So we have the legal thing in place. But what is not placed is in the custom and religious belief of the high caste. I had a look at the atrocity data. If you take atrocity data, particularly I wanted to look at it from 2014 to 2022. Close to 4 lakh cases of discrimination are registered by the league under these two acts, Prevention of Atrocity Act, which comes to on an average about 14,000 cases per year and continuously. One of the reasons why scheduled caste continued to remain relatively more poor than OBC and high caste, that they don't have access to resources, land and business, but also whenever they want to get an access, there is a discrimination that they face. There is a
completely flawed concept of merit, where I confuse my social position with my capability. Because for anybody to say that our education system or our bureaucratic entry systems are fair to Dalits and OBCs and tribals, I mean, that's just a complete fallacy, because they're culturally not connected to these communities at all. So the entire narrative is an upper caste narrative. This notion of merit is actually itself an unfair idea.
Yeah. The roots of this basically in the caste system, and one has to recognize that the lack of any initiative by the high caste who practice discrimination against the caste system and institutional untouchability is the reason why the discrimination continues. You can say till independence formally in terms of rule, the untouchable did not have right to land, right to business.
Neither did the OBC.
Yeah, the OBCs were certain caste of the OBCs were a peasant caste.
Yes.
That was from, in the Manusmriti they did not have any right to land, but by AD 700, the OBCs were allowed to cultivate the land as a owner and even as a tenant. But the untouchables did not have a right to own the land. But the point that I am making is that the untouchables did not have a right to resources, capital resources, business, and employment in the occupation of the high caste. Their only occupation was the casual manual labor for the high caste. Most of the untouchables were a slave caste, forced labor, attached labor, slave labor. We have given them instrument through which they can have political power, but that political power is not sufficiently backed by the economic power or even educational power.
Institutional power.
Institutional power. So as a result, they try to come together But at one stage or another, there are fragmentation. Huge
No, but
fragmentation.
there's another bigger problem, which is that the history of the Dalits, the history of the OBCs, the histories of tribals has just been eliminated. I never heard of a Dalit narrative. And then at the same time, there is this idea that is being pushed by the RSS and the BJP, right? Which is basically to destroy their history, to destroy the history of the Dalits and the Adivasis and the OBCs.
Research, writing, curriculum is in the hand of the high caste, and they won't write anything about the untouchable because their status was really pathetic. That is why in Maharashtra, the lead was given by the Dalit literature. Their views were not included into the curriculum. So what they did, they say, you don't believe us our life. So they began to write autobiographical writing. And one of the most classical academic writings then they have come. Daya Pawar, Namdev Dasar. They just produced their life, which the high caste could not then deny. And that is how the history, Dalit history began to...
No, but that history is not available through the main education system. An upper caste boy or girl who's going to a school in New Delhi has no idea about this. You know, that's how they can say things like, oh,
now you rightly mentioned that they are taking out those Ambedkar, Dalit Panther, discrimination.
See, what they're doing, they've realized that they need to give lower castes an avenue. So what they've done is they've given the lower castes the avenue of representative politics. And they've said whoever wants to become MLA, whoever wants to become MP can become. In fact, we will make them. BJP will make them. And then what they've done is they've taken the power out of the representation system. And where is the power? The power is in the institutional framework except the representative framework. Yeah. So the power is in the bureaucracy, the power is in the corporate India, the power is in the intelligence agencies. So it's a little trick that they're playing, yeah, which is कि भैया हाँ आपको representation दे देंगे, and representation means nothing.
Yeah.
That's to me what's going on.
But as you rightly pointed out, now there is an added dimension of ideology, making it taking the power of the representative and concentrating in the hand of the high power. So it has become extremely difficult now. You can see the series of policies are being taken and nothing is being said. I am familiar at least with the education sector, that the new education policy has come in a manner that it looks very good, that it has measured to improve the quality of higher education, but underneath, if you look at it, the objective is to stop the flow of massification of education. For example, bachelor degree has been now made of 4-year duration. There is no reason why it should be made 4-year duration. Now, additional 1 year means cost. So Dalit and poor people will only take 3-year bachelor, other will take 4-year bachelor.
They'll be underqualified.
They will be underqualified. In the market, if they go with 3-year bachelor and other go with 4-year bachelor, it is the 4-year bachelor which will go. So internal intention is not to push them up to the higher education. I think the most important point and difficult class for them is the one who writes and point out the situation. So stop the flow to the higher education. Then there is another way.
So you think it's purposely done to stop Dalit mobilization?
On the face of it, it doesn't look. But the internal meaning of that is the same. I think you look at the allocation to the higher education. You know, in the 11th plan, when I was a chairman, Dr. Manmohan Singh increased the sales by 2% and increased the budget to the higher education 11 times more compared to the 10th plan. So that was his vision of higher education. Now you see a very drastic decline to allocation to the higher education, and there is a purpose behind that. My point will be, it will be necessary to understand the history and to understand the role of these people.
What would be the 2 or 3 steps that you would take in the Indian education system that could impact this inequality? Like if you were given a blank piece of paper, what would be the 3 things that you would say, these are the 3 things I would do, that would really impact scale of our education system, penetration of our education system, that could transform our education system?
I think I will prefer what Congress and Nehru did in the early 50s, that we began with public education system, government school, government colleges, government universities, with a very less fee. So public education system was the instrument which was used by Congress to give access to the education to everybody. But eventually, over a period of time, we discovered that there is a huge privatization of the higher education and school education. crisis because of the privatization, immense inequality. I think the centralization is the cause. You are outsourcing to the private agency the admissions in medical, engineering, other. What was the earlier system? During the 50s and the 60s, university will give the admission, college will give the admission. So I think with the reform, what one has to do is to have admission at the institutional level, college, university.
So decentralization of power, basically.
Yeah, decentralization of admission.
And what would be the other two things that you do?
For the education.
One, you said public education. Two, you said decentralization of power. And three?
Third would be the government should not give excuses that they don't have a fund for higher education and school education. That is the reason which has been used, that we don't have funding, so we depend on the private funding. That reason has not been used by Europe. They devoted a larger portion of the national income as they grew to the education and to the health for higher education.
And it's a huge money-making business on the other side.
Yeah. So I think the more resources to the higher education and school education, that we should revert back to the public education system at all level of education, and then the decentralized education system. In any case, the education is concurrent list. It's the state which hold the basic stay in the higher education and school education.
Okay. What is your experience of this caste census?
I think this is a very useful exercise. It has thrown up a data, very new data, extensive data. And you have the ownership of land, ownership of business, employment pattern, education level, income level, then access to civic amenities like housing, electricity, drainage. But I think the sort of a normal look, it seems to me that you get a pattern.
Clear pattern.
Clear pattern. The caste hierarchy, you get it.
But I think the idea that truth of discrimination in India should be known to everybody. This is a powerful idea. Why are people so much against the caste census? Like, what don't they like about it? What is it that this creates this reaction?
The answer is quite obvious, that it will expose the reality.
Huh?
it will, as you said, it will give the idea that who is monopolizing economic resources, who is monopolizing civic community and housing, who is monopolizing education, and that is the fear. Because it will throw the caste system in a modern form, and that they don't want. The reality, they don't want the reality and inequality based on the caste, the privileges that one particular section of high caste is enjoying, and the cost of the others, OBC and the untouchable, because the high caste benefited at the cost of denying equal right to others. So, as Dr. Ambedkar has put it very rightly, that the high caste are not against, in favor of inequality, they are opposed to equality. The principle is they are opposed to equality and they believe firmly in inequality.
There's certainly a capture of our system, education system, healthcare system, political system, bureaucratic system. So for me it's important that the truth of what is going on in India with regards to who has what access, who controls which institutions, who's where, to me that's a fundamental nationalist exercise. I think it's not supporting the caste census is actually anti-national, because what you're saying is that we're not ready to accept the truth of what is going on in our country. So I'm quite wedded to the idea of the caste census. I think we need to iterate it further, we need to deepen it, and we need to make it more sophisticated, and that's why you have the committee there, and I think it needs to be broad-based. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. This is the recent book I got on discrimination, Oxford, Scheduled Caste in Indian Labour Market. This was the earlier one. This was the first on economic discrimination, and it gave creative wave. And this was on the status of the league.
Thank you. Thank you very much.